My boss told me I was replaceable in front of the entire team. 2 hours later, his biggest investor walked into the office, looked around the room, and asked the one question that made everyone go silent. "Where is Daniel?" I was already sitting in my car when Emma called. "Daniel, you need to come back." I looked at the office building through my windshield. "I don't work there anymore." "I know." "Then why are you calling me?" "Because James Whitmore is here." I knew that name. James had invested nearly $30 million in the company and rarely visited the office. "What does he want?" "He's asking for you." I almost laughed. This morning Richard told everyone I wasn't important anymore. Emma went quiet. "That's why you need to come back." "My name is Daniel Carter." I was 41, and I had worked for the company for almost 9 years. When I started, there were 12 employees. By the time I was fired, there were more than 200. I had helped build the sales department from scratch. I created the client tracking system, developed the reporting process, and personally managed several accounts that generated millions of dollars every year. I never expected praise. I just wanted to do good work. For years, that was enough. Then Richard became my boss. At first, I thought he was simply ambitious. He wasn't. He was the kind of manager who remembered every mistake someone made but somehow forgot every success. The first time I realized something was wrong was when I saw one of my reports on the boardroom screen. Richard was presenting it. The numbers were mine. The analysis was mine. Even the wording was mine. But underneath the report was his name. After the meeting, I asked him about it. "You used my report." He smiled. "We're a team. You didn't mention my name. Does it really matter?" I stared at him. "Yes." He laughed. "You need to think bigger, Daniel." I walked away. After that, it happened repeatedly. My work became his work. When the company gained a major client, Richard stood in front of the executives and accepted the congratulations. When an account had problems, he sent the emails to me. I started keeping copies of everything. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I had begun to realize that I might need proof someday. 6 months before my firing, I noticed something strange in the company's financial reports. Several large accounts were showing unusually high expenses. The numbers didn't make sense. I checked the invoices. Then the payment records. Then the vendor information. I found 3 companies receiving regular payments from us. They provided almost no actual services. I brought the information to Richard. He looked at the spreadsheet for less than a minute. "Stop digging." "Why?" "Because accounting handles this. These payments aren't normal." "Daniel." He looked directly at me. "I'm telling you to stop." I didn't. I continued checking. The more I found, the worse it became. One of the vendors had been registered only 4 months before its first payment. Another had the same mailing address as a company I had never heard of. The third was connected to a man named Michael Ross. I didn't know Michael. But I recognized his name from an old company document. He was Richard's brother-in-law. I printed everything. Then I prepared a report. I called it a risk analysis. I sent it to Richard and copied the company's chief financial officer. 3 days later, Richard called me into his office. "You went over my head. I sent them financial concerns. You were told to stop." "I was told to stop asking questions." "Same thing." "No," he leaned forward. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe. You think you're protecting this company." "I am." He smiled. "You're protecting yourself." I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. 2 weeks later, Richard presented a new financial report to the board. It was my report. But this time, he had changed the numbers. The suspicious payments were gone. The report said the company's financial position was strong. I immediately objected. That isn't the original analysis. Everyone looked at me. Richard smiled calmly. Daniel seems confused. I pulled up my saved copy. I have the original. The CFO looked uncomfortable. Richard said, "We made adjustments after reviewing the data. You removed the transactions. Because they were legitimate. Then why weren't they included?" The room went silent. The board chairman ended the meeting. The next morning, Richard warned me that I was becoming difficult. 3 months later, he gave me a performance warning. Then another. I knew what was happening. He was building a record against me. Still, I stayed. I thought the truth would eventually protect me. I was wrong. On a Monday morning, Richard called me into his office. He didn't ask me to sit. "Your position is being eliminated." I stared at him. "Why?" "Restructuring." "You mean you're firing me?" "We're making changes." "After 9 years?" He shrugged. "Everyone is replaceable." Those words hurt more than I expected. Not because I believed him. Because he said them as if the 9 years meant nothing. Before I left, he gathered the department. "I want everyone to understand that Daniel's role is no longer essential." Nobody spoke. Emma looked at me. She had tears in her eyes. I picked up the box containing my personal belongings. Richard walked past me. "Don't take it personally." I looked at him. "I won't." Then I walked out. 2 hours later, Emma called. "James Whitmore is here." I almost refused to return. Then she said, "He has your original report." I froze. "What?" "He's holding a copy." "How?" "I don't know." I drove back. When I entered the conference room, James Whitmore was sitting at the table. Richard stood beside him. James looked at me. "You're Daniel Carter?" "Yes." He stood and shook my hand. "I've been trying to meet you for 6 months." Richard's face tightened. James opened a folder. I received 2 versions of the company's financial analysis. He placed one document on the table. This one was submitted by Richard. Then he placed another beside it. This one was sent to me anonymously. I recognized it immediately. It was my original report. James looked at me. "Did you write this?" "Yes." "Did you warn management about the suspicious payments?" "Yes." "Were you told to stop investigating?" I looked at Richard. "Yes." Richard interrupted. "James, there's an explanation." James didn't even look at him. "I'll hear it later." He turned back to me. "Why were you fired this morning?" "I was told my position was no longer necessary." James looked at Richard. Then at the CFO. Then at the folder. A woman from accounting entered the room carrying another file. "Mr. Whitmore," she said nervously, "I found something else." James opened it. His expression changed. He looked at Richard. "Where did this money go?" Richard said nothing. James turned the document toward me. I recognized the account number. It belonged to one of the vendors I had investigated. But the company name had changed. The new owner was listed as Richard's brother-in-law. I looked at Richard. He was completely silent. Then James said quietly, "This isn't a mistake." He closed the file. "Someone has been stealing from this company." And for the first time since I had been fired, I realized something terrifying. Richard hadn't removed me because I was replaceable. He had removed me because I was getting too close. But James wasn't finished. He reached into his briefcase and placed a second folder on the table. I found something worse. He looked directly at me. And Daniel, your name is on it. I opened the folder. The first page showed an authorization form. My signature was at the bottom. I had never signed it. Richard had used my name. And if James was right, someone had been preparing to make me take the blame for everything for several seconds. Nobody moved. I stared at the authorization form. My name was printed clearly at the top. My signature was at the bottom. It looked real. Almost perfect. But it wasn't mine. I didn't sign this, I said. James nodded. I know. Richard finally spoke. That's ridiculous. James looked at him. Then explain why the signature was created from a scanned copy of Daniel's original paperwork. Richard's face changed. The room became silent. I looked at the CFO. Did you know about this? She shook her head. No. James turned toward the accounting manager. Show them. She connected her laptop to the screen. A spreadsheet appeared. It showed payments made over the previous 18 months. There were dozens. Millions of dollars in total. Every payment had been approved using different employee signatures. Mine appeared more than any other. I felt sick. So you were building a case against me. Richard stood. This is nonsense. James didn't move. Sit down. Richard hesitated. Then he sat. The accounting manager continued. We traced several of the vendors. She opened another file. One company is registered to Richard's brother-in-law. Another was registered to a former employee. The third belonged to a consulting firm that had never provided the services it billed for. James looked at me. You were right. I nodded. I knew something was wrong. You didn't know how deep it went. No. James closed the laptop. Neither did I. Richard looked at him. You're making a serious mistake. James laughed quietly. No, Richard. You made the mistake. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a printed email. This was sent from your account 6 months ago. Richard's face went pale. The email was addressed to the accounting department. It instructed them to move several payments into a new vendor account. The signature at the bottom was Richard's. But the email wasn't the strongest evidence. James had something else. A recording. He played it. Richard's voice filled the room. Daniel is asking too many questions. We need to get him away from the financial reports. I felt a cold wave move through me. Then another voice spoke. Richard's brother-in-law. What if he refuses? Richard answered, he won't have a choice. The recording ended. Nobody spoke. Richard looked around the room. I can explain. James stood. You can explain it to the investigators. The police arrived less than an hour later. Richard was escorted from the building. His brother-in-law was questioned the same day. The company froze the suspicious accounts. The investigation continued for months. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. 3 weeks later, James called me. I want to meet. We sat in a quiet restaurant. He placed a folder on the table. We recovered most of the missing money. I nodded. That's good. There is something else. I opened the folder. Inside was a contract. James looked at me. I want you to lead the company's new operations division. I stared at him. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a position with authority. I laughed. 6 weeks ago I was fired. I know. And now you want me back? Not back. He leaned forward. I want you to build something new. I didn't answer immediately. Part of me wanted to say yes because it would prove Richard had been wrong. Another part of me wanted nothing to do with the company. James seemed to understand. You don't have to decide today. I took the contract home. That evening, Emma called. Did you accept? I haven't decided. You should. Why? Because you always wanted to build the department properly. I smiled. You sound like my career counselor. I watched what happened. She paused. You were never replaceable. Those words meant more to me than she probably realized. The next morning, I accepted. But I added one condition. Every financial report would have independent oversight. No executive could alter an employee's report without leaving a documented record. And employees would have a protected channel for reporting financial concerns. James agreed. The company slowly rebuilt itself. Several executives resigned. New controls were introduced. The suspicious vendors were removed. And the employees who had been afraid to speak finally started talking. One afternoon, I walked past the conference room where Richard had once presented my work as his own. My old office was empty. I stood there for a moment. Then I noticed something on the desk. It was a copy of my original report. Someone had framed it. Underneath it was a small plaque. Prepared by Daniel Carter. I smiled. But I didn't need the plaque anymore. What mattered was that the truth was finally on record. Months later, I received a letter from Richard. He was waiting for trial. He wrote, I spent years thinking being powerful meant controlling everyone around me. I thought you were a threat because you asked questions. The truth is, you were the only person trying to protect the company. I read the letter once. Then I put it away. I didn't forgive him. But I didn't need to hate him either. His choices had consequences. Mine did too. Losing my job had forced me to decide what kind of career I actually wanted. I didn't want a title. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to work somewhere people could speak the truth without being punished for it. A year after my firing, James invited me to a company meeting. More than 200 employees were sitting in the room. He stood beside me. Today, Daniel becomes our Chief Operations Officer. The room applauded. I looked around. Emma was standing near the back. She smiled. I smiled back. Then James handed me the microphone. I could have talked about Richard. I could have talked about the fraud. I could have told everyone how badly I had been treated. Instead, I simply said, never be afraid to ask why. The room became quiet. Sometimes the person asking the difficult question is the person trying hardest to protect everyone. I put down the microphone. That was all I needed to say. Later that evening, I walked outside alone. The office lights reflected against the glass doors. I thought about the morning Richard had told me I was replaceable. At the time, I had believed losing my job meant losing everything I had built. I was wrong. I hadn't lost my career. I had lost a place that no longer deserved me. And the man who tried to erase my name from my own work had accidentally given me something far more valuable. A reason to build something where my name never needed to be stolen again.